What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and bringing another little nugget to add to the Soul Tribe archive. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about Mars and Scorpio in the sixth house. And this is an interesting place for Mars to be. Now Mars is what energizes us. It gets us going, gets us into action. Mars is what tackles the day. Mars is like life. You want it, come get it. That's Mars in a nutshell. But Mars is the thing that drives us to action, the thing that keeps us motivated and to keep us that helps us to stay focused on our passions, to stay true to the course. Mars is that circle with the arrow. There's a real intense focus when it comes with Mars. I really like Martian energy. And then you get to Scorpio. This is the fixed water sign ruled by the mighty Mars here. And when you're thinking about Scorpio, they have this passion about them. They have this way of channeling emotions in a very concentrated way and then moving that energy outside of themselves. There's this, and they can transmute these emotions. It's really cool what Scorpio energy is capable of. And then you have the sixth house, which is a tougher house. It's considered in traditional astrology, it's like the second to last house after the 12th house, or before the 12th house, or after the 12th house, whatever. And the sixth house is about illnesses, injuries, servitude, enemies. But when you combine all this stuff, interestingly enough, in traditional astrology, Mars celebrates in the sixth house. So he really rejoices in this energy, because this is like, oh, injuries, illness, battlefields, like, yeah, like this is sign me up. Mars is like, I couldn't be happier. And yes, I could be in my home sign. I could be, because with Mars here, this is a very strong Scorpio placement. This would be, I would say, for some, I actually know someone who has this. This would be a Gemini rising. I know someone who she's a labor nurse. And I would say, like, I can imagine anyone better doing something like that. We're working in an environment like that where there is some intense things that are going on. There's this, got to monitor the mother's health, monitor the baby's health, but she's focused, she's driven, she can handle that. She can transmit that what would normally maybe make people feel really anxious, she can channel that into focus. She can channel that into to do the best work. So this is, and whatever this is that you do, this doesn't have to be where you have to be some sort of nurse, but it's in anything that you do, there is going to be a drive. There's going to be a focus, and I would be mindful of competition. I'd be mindful of, because even though Mars rejoices in the sixth house, Mars enjoys stirring up some trouble. So I would say be mindful of any sort of like Gemini, you're being a Gemini rising. Again, this is by whole sign. But any sort of gossiping, or, just kind of getting into any sort of like workplace stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Because I've worked in numerous places, and it's all very, very similar. The word, no matter how big or how small, word travels fast. People love to talk. So just be mindful of what side of that conversation you're on. And some other things with this, I could see this as someone who can, because Scorpio is a very creative energy too. I don't feel like that's really talked about enough. Scorpio is so creative and so passionate. And I could say this is someone whose art maybe your dance could, I'm just saying this as someone, maybe you're running a studio to help maybe people. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, maybe even helping people move in their body again. Maybe they had some sort of accident or something along those lines, and you're helping them kind of rehabilitate, getting them in this movement. I see like physical therapists is what I could see with this. Like doing something where you're turning misfortune into a blessing. That's what I think Scorpio really does best at. And I would be mindful of how much you spread yourself. I would be just like, not that you can't do stuff for others, of course, but make sure to check in with your body, because where this is a very strong placement for Mars, Mars could get so focused that sixth house things that it could ignore its own health. So that's something to be mindful of. I'd say just keep an eye on that. Make sure to regularly check in with yourself, and of the making sure that you have ways to, especially if you're working with a lot of, let's say, maybe people's trauma or anything along those lines, whether that be physical trauma, emotional trauma, spiritual trauma, whatever that may be, making sure to have regular practices where you can have ways to move that, whether that be in some sort of like art therapy, whether this be in some kind of dance, something where maybe you need to go run, or you need to something to make sure that you really kind of sweat and kind of that you're regularly cleansing, because Scorpio can pull. It's a very magnetic energy, so Scorpio can pull a lot. So you want to make sure that way, especially if you've been feeling fixated on something, be mindful, just pay attention to that. And one last little thing, I think of, pay attention to your relationship with anger, and if that's something that resonates with anger, or any sort of real kind of hot inflammatory type of energy, something that gets the blood boiling, because I could see that if you have troubles with that, that could, and it's not medical advice or anything, but just keep an eye on how that affects the body. That would just be one thing that I would pay attention to with another thing that I would pay attention to with this. But overall, you could even take, let's say, if you were someone who has gone through a lot of maybe health things, maybe it's been something that you've been working with since maybe childhood, possibly. Maybe you've learned how to, through different practices, maybe you had to do different therapies so that you weren't just stuck in bed doing stuff. So you can pass along these practices to other people, or at least that's something that I would invite. If you are someone who tends to have some kind of regular things, what are some ways to how can you turn that into something powerful, something empowering? So, but you know what? I would love to hear if you have this placement, how, because I actually know quite a few people who have this Mars. I've met wow. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I've met a few people who've had this like Mars and Scorpio placement, and it's something ferocious, but in the best way though. It's a whole vibe. Ooh, it's a whole vibe. So let's get a whole vibe started. Comment down in the description box below if you have this placement. And yeah, I always appreciate you stopping by. And until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the roof. Seize the day and the night. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.